Welcome everyone, and as y'all start getting all signed up to go, I'm going to remind y'all to keep your audio muted, and we'll probably end up, depending on the bandwidth and everything else, maybe have to shut your videos off. But for right now, thank y'all very much for joining us. We'll start here in just a moment. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Eddie McBride. I'm the president and CEO of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce. Thank y'all very much for joining us today. And again, as a reminder, just keep your audio muted so it doesn't interfere with our process today. We all understand how difficult this last month has been. It's kind of an understatement to even say something like that. But we've invited our superintendents from our 3 largest school districts to join us today to share the measures that the educators have been working through and to make sure that all of our children and all of our young adults are obviously getting the quality education that we know each of these 3 school districts are trying to achieve. With the announcement by the governor last Friday, we all know that there's not going to be any school the rest of this particular school year. And we know that there's going to be a lot of questions on how the end of the year is going to occur. We hope to answer all of those questions today, and there'll be time at the end of this webinar for y'all to ask them individual questions. So in the Zoom group chat room, if you want to go ahead during the course, if you think of some questions, don't hesitate to ask those. And if they're by a specific superintendent, please put their name associated with that. And one more as a reminder, please keep yourself muted during the event. Please help us welcome our first guest, Dr. Michelle McCord, the superintendent of Frenship Independent School District. And Michelle, as we talked about, please give a little bit of background about yourself and the district and the schools and your students, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you for having us. Yes, it has been a whirlwind of a last month or so, but my name is Michelle McCord, and I have been the superintendent here at Frenship, just finishing up my 5th year. This is my 10th year in the school district. I served 5 years as an assistant superintendent. And Frenship, as many of you already know, we serve about 10,300 students, and we employ about 1,200 people. And our district is basically, it's the east-west dividing line is Frankfort. So east side of Frankfort is Lubbock ISD, west side of Frankfort is Frenship. And then we go south to 98th Street. Then as you get a little further out west, we go further south. And then we go as far north as it's actually called Ursuline. So it's north of 4th Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I want to introduce Keith Bryant from Lubbock-Cooper Independent School District. Keith, if you would introduce yourself and give a little bit of background on your district as well, please, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. I've been superintendent of Lubbock-Cooper for 6 years now, and during those 6 years, we've continued to be what's considered a fast growth district, much like Frenship in the state of Texas. And so we have an enrollment currently of right at 7,000 students. We have approximately 900 employees. And I think our greatest challenge has been managing the growth. As you know, we are south of 98th Street is our northern boundary. And then we run within a couple of miles of Slayton on the east side, down to the Lynn County line on the south side, and out to basically Upland and or Milwaukee, depending on what how far north you are on the west side bordering Frenship. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for this opportunity to visit with you.
Thank you, Keith. Now I introduce Dr. Kathy Rollo, our superintendent from Lubbock Independent School District. Thank you for joining us, Kathy.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Kathy Rollo, and I am honored and humbled to be serving in the school district that has been my home for my entire life. In fact, I'm a product of Lubbock ISD. I have been in this role as superintendent for a little bit over 2 years. We serve 27,500 students in Lubbock ISD, so we are the largest school district in Lubbock County, and we have approximately 3,000 employees. We have 4 comprehensive high schools, plus the Talkington School for Young Women Leaders, and 51 campuses.
Wow. That's quite a bit. Kathy, thank you so much for that. And as a matter of transparency, I want to make sure all the folks who are listening in today know that these 3 superintendents are not only in charge of their school districts, but they're also in charge of me being on all 3 of them being on the Lubbock Chamber Board of Directors. So if you see me being extra nice to them and throwing out some moderated softball questions, well, that's what y'all should expect me to do with them being my bosses. So thank you all 3 of y'all again for being here. Michelle, I'm going to toss this first question to you, please, and then we'll ask the other 2 to follow. How have your teachers actually transitioned to online teaching versus the traditional classroom teaching, and what kind of platforms are being used to accomplish this online distance teaching?
Thank you, Eddie. Well, of course, I couldn't be more proud of our teachers and just every teacher across the country, as they have had to pivot very quickly. So, and also they've been very patient with us as a district as we try to support them. But one of the ways that we have transitioned to online as versus traditional classroom is one of the things that is so different is you don't have that peer-to-peer or face-to-face interaction. So what we've used is every kind of communication tool that we could get our hands on. And some of those they're fancy words. I had to kind of look these words up, but we use some asynchronous platforms and synchronous platforms for communication. And basically all that means is asynchronous communication is you're not all communicating at the same time. So like an email or an individual phone call to a student, that's called asynchronous. Synchronous platforms is kind of like what we're doing right now. It's when you're all communicating together virtually in a platform like Zoom. We actually use a platform called Teams, which is a Office 365 product, but we've used Zoom. We've used things like Seesaw. The learning platform we use for students in grades 6 through 12 is it's a brand name, but it's called Schoology. It's kind of like Blackboard and other things that you've heard of. So kids can submit work and teachers can communicate with kids. It's been more of a challenge for us in our elementary. Many of our kids do have devices, but we don't have a specific platform that we use. We've used all kinds of different things, Remind 101, but it's really important. Our teachers have done a great job, but one of the things that's missing for them that's really hard is a way to effectively evaluate the student mastery of different concepts. That's a big part of who a teacher is and their expertise. But we've been trying a little bit of everything, and we've just communicated the best way we know how, and much like all the other districts have done. Certainly, we've tried lots of things, and we have failed at some of them. Our teachers haven't failed. I've kind of failed in giving good directions sometime, but they're hanging in there.
That's good. We certainly wish all of the teachers and all of the districts the best. We know what a challenging time it is for them. And Keith, would you also say what y'all are doing out at Cooper in that regard, please, sir?
You bet. So about 5 years ago, we began an initiative within the district to put as many iPads in the hands of our kids as we could after a year of looking at different tools to use. And then this year, we just are completing our first year of actually being one-to-one. And so we've done a lot of digital instruction over the past few years. And so our transition from the classroom to the home classroom, it was difficult. There's no doubt about it, but it was made easier because we all had a similar device to use. And so Google Classroom is huge. It's been used for a few years by teachers in our district, also Seesaw and some of the others that were mentioned earlier. But I'll tell you what has been the greatest struggle for our teachers, and I don't want to speak for Michelle and Kathy, but I'm sure theirs as well. And that's the emotional side of it, not seeing their kids on a daily basis. Learning at home is it's a necessity now, but it is not the long-term solution. And I'm afraid there are those out there that may say, hey, this is a new way to do education. And I'm just here to say you cannot replace the relationships, the human factor that go into a classroom every day in terms of the kids and the teachers. But we've been able to use a variety of different software that we have, apps and different things, and yet we still have a significant portion of our population that are struggling because of their family situations. And so it's not a replacement for the classroom, but it has been an easier transition for us than other districts in the state that I'm aware of, just because we had some of that technology available to our kids on a one-to-one basis already.
Well, that's great. And it's always good to hear about the ease of the transition as well for not only your students, but also your teachers as well. 27,000 students, Kathy. So that's how has it been going for y'all?
Well, much like Keith, we had enough devices in the district. We have Chromebooks that we were able, the Thursday and Friday before spring break, when it started to become apparent that we may not come back after spring break, we quickly went to campuses and checked those Chromebooks out to each 2nd through 12th grader so that they would take that home and have it with them. So we were grateful that we got that done before we left for spring break. And then our team during spring break, our central office team, spent that week standing up some professional learning for teachers. The week after spring break, we had some online things for kids to do, but our teachers were very busy building up their lessons to stand up remotely. Much like the other districts, our primary grades are using Seesaw and Remind. We did not send Chromebooks home with first graders, but we are getting those to first graders this week. Fortunately, we had been using Google Classroom quite a bit, and so that's the platform we've used to stand up for our 2nd through 12th graders, and are now also going to be doing that for first graders. Our teachers have done a really great job of trying some innovative things and some creative things that I think will last after this is over, but I could not agree with Keith more that face-to-face is definitely important. And one of the things we've really encouraged our teachers to do is to make sure as they're creating their learning opportunities for students that they're also embedding a lot of the social emotional learning components that we know are so important, especially during a time like this.
Yes, ma'am, that face-to-face, we know that can't be replaced, and all three of y'all have spoken to that. And so now we've talked about the students and everything. How about communicating with your teachers and your support staff and your other administrators? We were laughing before the rest of y'all got on is that I said the chamber staff and I have probably actually communicated more than we ever have before. So Keith, why don't you start off by answering how you communicated with your administrators, your educators, and your support staff, please, sir.
One of the unique things about this circumstance has been the need to have social interaction with adults to adults. We forget how often we miss that because I think we took it for granted a lot. And so we've been intentional in our efforts. We meet as an administrative team in the district once a week. We do it via Zoom. We also use Google Meets, Google Hangout, and we've done some WebEx and some different things as well. But then the campus principals are meeting with their teachers twice a week. There is constant communication between campuses, between departments. Our curriculum department, they are working with grade levels and departments all 5 days of the week. So there's constant staff development going on. How do we teach this skill a little bit better? So in some ways, communication, as you mentioned, Eddie, may be a little bit, it may be happening more often, but again, just even having this meeting digitally, I can see many of your faces, but I really can't see your reactions. And so, it's just different, and it's become a new normal that we've had to adjust to. But I would say just being intentional about it and being consistent with it are the two keys for us in order to take care of our staff and our administration. And the other thing I'll mention is we're very keenly aware of the social and emotional aspect of our employees. We partner with Texas Tech University Health Science Center for the Employee Assistance Program, and we've set up a couple of different meetings virtually for those a couple of times a week. If we have employees that are struggling with home life or isolation, we followed this whole concept. We call it separate but not isolate. We don't want a kid, we don't want a teacher, we don't want an employee being isolated. And that's been our biggest challenge, to make sure that does not happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Keith. Well, Kathy, 3,000 of y'all, I can imagine having 3,000 on a Zoom screen all at the same time. How are y'all doing?
Well, we have not attempted to have 3,000 on a Zoom screen, but our internal team is meeting 3 times a week, and I'm talking about our central office team. We are having Zoom meetings twice a week with all of our principals. So just like what you said, Eddie, and what you said, Keith, we're probably actually communicating more right now, although it's remote, of course. And I agree with Keith that face-to-face is much better, because you can see everyone's eyes and faces and reactions. We are continuing to have our principals are having a daily morning Zoom with their teachers, just to touch base and make sure everyone's okay. Again, that we're checking on the well-being of our teachers as well. We are having weekly professional learning communities. I know Keith and Michelle know PLCs very well, but we are continuing to have those with our teachers by content and grade, so that we can continue to provide that support for them that they need. I actually had a superintendent advisory committee meeting virtually with our elementary folks on Monday, and then one with our secondary folks, and these are representatives from each campus. So it was a great opportunity to really touch base and see, just check on the pulse of our employees. We are doing a weekly video that we are sending home to both our staff and our families, just to provide them with some updated information and just stay connected. So normally we do that about once a month. So we're actually doing that more often than we usually do. And then I'm updating our board of trustees at the end of each day with just some quick highlights of new information. Normally we do a Friday update. So we're actually doing that daily right now as well. So I think there is more communication. It just looks very different.
Yeah, it does. So thank you, Kathy. Michelle, I'm sure not much difference for you as far as the amount of communication and the process. Tell us about how you're handling with your staff, administrators, and teachers.
Well, much like Kathy and Keith have already mentioned, we do, I think it is critically important for us to communicate. It does look different. It sounds different. Honestly, I try to think of the things that I'm grateful for, and I am grateful for technology, but I'm looking forward to the day when I have more face-to-face conversations and fewer Zoom meetings or team meetings. So we use the platform of Teams and Office 365, and our internal team, so Cabinet, which is my closest advisors, we meet twice a week, and then we have principals meet all together about once a week, and then we sort of divide that out from elementary to secondary. The needs and the questions are often very different, so the elementary principals meet together, and they're a fun group, and they have a good time and try to make the best of a difficult situation, and secondary meets together. Kind of also like Kathy, we do a video. I can tell you that I will never be a YouTube sensation. That is not going to happen. I don't really love the videos, but it is an effective tool for communication. And this sounds simplistic, but it really is important, is videos, but also our website. Just always having a consistent message to our stakeholder groups, whether that's our parents or our students or whomever, that we're a stabilizing force in the community, and we need to keep everybody informed of what's going on. Whether it's through social media channels or website, COVID related items particularly. So we do that. And then we also did I can't believe I'm telling this. Don't go look at it. It's really not good. But on Twitter, we have done 2 episodes of what we call Friendship Follies. And I was at a weak moment. Our communications department asked me we need to lighten it up a little bit. So we asked people to send in funny things, funny videos or things that have happened. And we've done a couple of episodes of those as well.
Well, I'm just wrote it down to make sure I go up and follow it. So that'll be a fun thing to do. And the website information is, so that's probably one of the things that we at the Chamber, as far as for the business community, have worked the hardest to have a page for all those COVID-19 information and resources. So I certainly understand that as well. Kathy, I don't have a child, but I have a grandchild in school. And so I do know how the parents and students are entertaining themselves at their house, but how do you think this has impacted this COVID-19 coronavirus situation? How do you think it's impacted the students' home life along with their parents? And what kind of support is offered to parents who are now homeschool teachers?
Yes. So first of all, I just have to give a big shout out to all of our parents, grandparents, caregivers out there throughout the nation and world who have overnight taken on this new role of being teachers. And one thing that I think could be a positive that has come out of this is I think they're realizing how challenging teaching can be. I think there's a newfound respect for our teachers. In fact, I had somebody text me and ask if they could please request a substitute for a little while. So I definitely think that our parents have done a fantastic job. And I know many of them are also working from home and taking care of other things from home. And so I know it can be very stressful and very challenging. A phrase we've used a lot in our district over the last 5 weeks is buckets of grace. We are trying to give each other buckets of grace. We try to make sure that we're giving our teachers buckets of grace as they transform what they do. And then, of course, we want to give our parents buckets of grace as well during this time. So as far as support, Michelle mentioned their website. We have a great website that has lots and lots of resources for parents on there. One of the things that we stood up early on were some schedules that parents could use as a guide to plan out the day. And the schedules include time for breaks, time to go outside and get fresh air. Of course, by no means each family needs to figure out what schedule works best for them as they settle into the routine, but we have provided that resource. We also started something new called Pep Talks with Martha. Martha Dodge is our social emotional learning coordinator for Lubbock ISD, and so she is also homeschooling right now at home with 2 small children, and so she is living it and breathing it, and so she's giving parents regular little video pep talks and things that they can keep in mind. For example, it's about progress, not perfection. That's one of the things that she talks about in one of her videos. And then we did survey our parents at the end of our first week of remote instruction, just to gauge, how is the amount of work? How's the amount of communication? So based on that survey, we've been able to make some adjustments and tweaks to what we're doing to better meet their needs. And we'll continue to do that periodically so that we can continue to provide the support that they need as we go through this together.
Well, it's all this innovation that not only are you doing it in the district, but also in the homes in the district. So that's cool, Kathy. Michelle, how about y'all? How about the students and the new homeschool teachers that y'all have the opportunity to work with?
Well, everybody's situation is so different. I think that's one of the things that we already knew, but is becoming very clear, is that everybody's situation is different. Everybody's child is different. And so a parent, you may be working all day, and so you're trying to help your kids in the evening. And so if I could just be transparent and say, I think our parents are doing an amazing job, but I think that the stress level is off the chart.
Yeah.
I think it's off the chart because this is not their wheelhouse. And even if it was their wheelhouse, let's say I'm a teacher and I decided to stay home with my kids, but maybe my spouse has lost his job, or maybe I've lost my job. And so not only are you trying to take care of your children and help educate them in a way that you've never done before, but you have many, many stressors in your life. We have counselors that are on call, and it's just so important that we communicate with the kids. But we also have some things on our website for parents to deal with some behaviors maybe that they're seeing from their children, because I'm just going to tell you, COVID does not bring out the best in anybody. The quarantining, now I say there are good things. People are doing good things, but they're having to work at it. Because it's hard. And I will say this, parents aren't only being the homeschool teacher, they're the homeschool lunch lady, they're the homeschool custodian, they're the homeschool principal. They're all of those things, and trying to make a living too. So we're trying to support the best way we can. And if there's anybody out there that's a Frenship parent, please call us. I'll tell you, that's the other thing that we're doing is we want someone to be available to talk to parents. We have somebody at every campus every single day answering the phones. We're here at central office answering the phones. We're being safe, we're social distancing, but we want somebody to have a voice, hear a voice on the other end of the line. And there's a way we can support you that we haven't. Please ask us, and we will do whatever we can to help you.
Yes, ma'am. And I know we all appreciate all that extra efforts that y'all do too. Keith, how about y'all?
Well, I will say that the dynamics are from both ends of the spectrum. We have parents who are college professors, and they're used to online learning, and so they have an expectation of the school and their own kids that's very high. Then we have parents at home who have lost their jobs, and they're concerned about survivability, and schooling is the furthest thing from their minds. And you have a mix of everybody in between. I will say that I'm glad our 3 kids are grown up, because they would be an in-school suspension in our house if we were homeschooling, I'm certain. But with that said, we have our teachers providing what we call a daily office hour time. It's the kids know this, the parents know this. And so there's a 2-hour span that's dedicated just to helping parents and or kids with issues. And a lot of that has turned out to be not related to school. It's turned out to be, how's your day going? What are your thoughts about this? And they're more life questions. We have kids parents who deal with kids who are severe and profoundly handicapped, a very, very important part of our population that we spend a lot of time at school with. And now all of a sudden, those kids are at home 24/7 with challenges. And we're using Communities in Schools, which is a resource that I know all 3 of us have in our districts, to help parents with those scenarios as well. And so there's no good answer. I'm just going to tell you right now, Eddie, this question is a great question, but there is no good answer to what can we do to support parents. Every parent is different. But I think the thing that we have to be is available and responsive. And that's what we've tried to do in all those areas.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Keith. And we know that all of y'all mentioned about the in-home stresses and everything that the parents and their children, their new students are going through. But what about Michelle, we'll start this with you. What is your greatest concern, drilling down a little bit, for the students being at home 24/7, not in a classroom setting, and in the accommodations that have been put into place to work with kids that are in that setting away from the classroom?
I would say, Eddie, that, I've been reading a lot of information, just like everyone has, about how best to support families and children. I mean, primarily, that is who we serve. Those are our customers, is our children. And I was reading an article that Keith mentioned this earlier, that it was an article from Johns Hopkins, and it says that online learning is absolutely no substitute for in-person learning, because kids don't have that peer-to-peer, they don't have the social interaction or the socialization. But my primary concern of our students right now is their wellness, their physical wellness, their academic wellness. But you know what? I would be kidding myself and other people if I said we're making great academic progress. That's not fair to the kids. It's not fair to the parents who don't understand, calculus or something. we are putting one foot in front of the other, and we're closing. We're trying to provide a service to get through the rest of the year, but I'm concerned about their physical wellness and just making sure they're okay. You all know this, everybody on the call knows this, but April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I'm certainly not casting aspersions on any parent, but we have many kids out there. One of the things that the school system does is teachers and school systems keep an eye on kids. That's one of the main avenues of identifying kids who may be being neglected or being in some kind of abusive situation at home, and we don't get our eyes on them anymore. And I'm worried sick about it. We're doing our best, but social emotional wellness is really my primary concern, and what is heartbreaking. And what made me, I'm glad the governor took the decision out of my hands, because I just don't think I ever could have shut the doors, because many parents are quite capable. Those kids are going to be fine without us, but we have a large number who aren't okay without the supports of the school.
That's well said, Michelle. Thank you. Keith?
Well, I would echo what Michelle said. I mean, many times, again, nothing against parents. I'm a parent. Many of you on this Zoom are parents, but and your kids are fine, and our kids are going to be fine. But many of our kids come from environments where that's not the case, and they're used to seeing a smile, receiving a hug, receiving a warm meal, receiving encouragement that they may not be getting. That's what keeps me up at night, the social and emotional wellness. We have an expectation that every single one of our 7,000 students have an interaction with an employee at least twice a week, that either through a phone call, a Google Meets, an email, something. There is contact made with kids. We started this whole thing out with a series of 10 questions, and the first 2 questions were, how are you doing, and what do you and your family need? And we made contact with every family in the district. And that's not to put us on a pedestal. That's just the heart of who we are, and it's who the heart of all 3 districts are. I promise you, all of our employees, while we care about academics, we care a lot more about the well-being of kids. So we have a licensed professional counselor on staff. We have counselors on every single campus. We have communities and schools that have resources, and we have used those. I can't speak to them. I can't give you examples. I could if it were a confidential environment, where we've intervened in situations that have been very helpful to kids. What concerns me is that we're missing some out there. There are kids that they're in great need. They're depressed. They don't have a support system. And how do we make sure we take care of those kids? So through our personal touches, in terms of contacts, not touches, but contacts, and through our resources we have with our counselors, and the relationship that they have with their teachers, that's what we're focusing on.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy, can you address that question, please, ma'am?
Yes, well, just as Keith and Michelle have both very eloquently said, the well-being of our kids, of course, is what is at the heart of all of this. We have 27,500 kids, and we've been able to at least connect with 99.8% of those. And so we are proud of that, especially given the fact that 3 out of 4 of our students live in poverty. And so addressing the basic wellness of all of our students has been so important to us. Our parents, just like Keith and Michelle as well, have the same issue. They count on us for nutrition. And so all 3 districts have fed kids, and I'm really proud that this community has been able to do that, because we need to make sure that they have the food they need in their home to be able to, they can't do schoolwork if they have not been able to find food. So that's been really important. Another concern that we had with having a large number of students who live in poverty is access to the internet. They have the devices, we got the devices to them, but if they don't have internet access, that is a huge issue, and we know it's a problem. And so we stood up some Park and Learn centers at 10 of our campuses, which boosted Wi-Fi access, and we've had lots of families utilize that. And then we are also getting hotspots to families to use in their home. And I know that Keith and Michelle have done very similar things. We have a resources needed tab on our website, and we're also passing out paper forms at our food distribution where families can reach out to us if they need food, if they need school supplies, anything they need. We're trying to make sure we address that need. And just like Keith and Michelle have said, our counselors are working right now. They're reaching out to their students. They're calling. We have a 3-layer net of security to make sure that our kids are okay. And I know Keith said they've actually intervened in many cases, and we have as well, where we ultimately will end up doing a home visit and doing a well check as we need to. So definitely making sure the well needs of our kids is our top priority.
Well, thank you. And talk about taking, personal care of those kids and social, emotional wellness, and missing seeing some of the kids where there's a group of students that's certainly that this coronavirus is going to be the semester that they'll never remember, seeing how they didn't really have the semester they were ever going to attend. But what is being planned for these seniors and the young adults that are not getting a chance to experience their full senior experiences, and their high school career comes to an end? What are y'all doing anything special for them? Keith, starting with you, if you don't mind, please, sir.
Well, I didn't realize until someone told me a couple weeks ago that this group of seniors were born in, many of them right after 9/11. And so you think about their lives being defined that way, and then to have a senior year where their last 9 weeks is cut off has been very, very difficult for many of them. My desire is to have, and I know I'm sure they'll address it, the ladies, is to have a graduation ceremony somehow, and would love to do it in person. That is a life event. It is a culmination of 12, 13 years of hard work. It's a memory that I remember walking across the stage when I graduated high school. In some cases, it's the first time someone in their family has done that. So it's important as much as we can to work with our community leaders, with our health authorities, and hopefully with the governor's blessing to be able sometime, not long after school is out, don't know what that would look like, but sometime to have graduation, to give them closure, to give them the ability to celebrate, to give them the opportunity to receive their diploma. Other things that they've missed out on, the prom and things of that nature, we just hand that over to parents and said, you're going to have to handle prom yourselves, because once school is out, there's really no way to do that. And so there may be some gatherings this summer in that regard. I hate it for our seniors, especially on the extracurricular front, not just athletics, but the musicians, the actors, the actresses, those that were involved in Skills USA, which is, building trades and plumbing, HVAC, those sort of things. Those kids worked, some of them have worked 3 or 4 years to get to this point, and then to have that taken away. And so we just need to provide closure if we can, is my thought. And so that's our desire at Lubbock-Cooper, is to provide a graduation ceremony as normally as possible as we can going.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy.
Yes, and Keith and Michelle and I have had conversations about this, but I think all 3 districts have definitely expressed a commitment to having some sort of graduation ceremony. It is so important for our kids. It is so important for their families, and we want to honor that. I have a niece who's a senior, so she gives me her opinion regularly on what we need to do about that. Just some other fun things that we've tried to do to help celebrate this very special group of kids is we had signs made that we have delivered and put in their yards just to recognize. I actually have all 5 signs out in my front yard right now just to honor them. We have done some senior spotlights on our social media sites. So our campuses are really trying to do things to really celebrate them. But I agree with Keith. This is really hard. But this group of kids is going to have a level of resiliency that that perhaps other groups may not have to have experienced. So we're very proud of them.
Thank you, Kathy. Michelle, how are you taking care of the seniors?
Well, I mean, much like the others have said, but I just wanted to start out by saying, I mean, I don't know who's listening or who's watching, but, you know, we're going to do the very best we can to recognize seniors, but I just want to stop for a second and just say how sorry I am for them, because well, I can't talk very much about it or I'll start crying. But I think we have to stop for a minute and grieve with them for what they've lost. There's just no way. We'll do everything we can to recognize them, but there's no way to give them back what they lost. I would say this, though, that I have had several seniors whom I don't know. I mean, we have a large district. We're probably going to graduate over 650 seniors, and I've had several of them contact me and tell me what a great experience they've had learning here, that they're sad about not getting to come back, but just the appreciation. They're appreciating us for the education that they've been provided. And I think that just speaks to our parents, the great job that they've done, and how we're not only that schools don't just teach reading, math, science, and social studies, but we've been equipping young men and women who have stood up, and I have seen them be so empathetic toward each other and toward vulnerable populations. And so rather than focusing on themselves and what they've lost, I am so proud of them. But what we're going to do is, oh my word, we've got to have graduation. We got to figure out a way to have graduation. We've got to have it safely. But we are just thinking of, we're looking at all kinds of ways to recognize and have closure on this chapter. Kids need closure as they begin the next step of their lives. And not only do their kids need it, but their parents need it. And like Kathy said, I think they're going to be, these kids are resilient. I'm sorry that they've had to have this character builder kind of lesson that they're getting, but they're going to even be better equipped. And they're not just learners, they're leaders. They're showing themselves to be thoughtful, empathetic adults. And we're using social media. We're trying to recognize kids in lots and lots of different ways. But honestly, it's just not the same. But we're committed and keeping our fingers crossed that whoever I need to beg, I will beg and plead and cry to get us to have graduation.
Well, and thank you for saying that. And I think, and as both Kathy and Keith have said, providing some type of closure with the ceremony. I think the mayor has shown the commitment for getting y'all's input from the school districts by having all three of y'all on the Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force. So thank you for the sacrifice and time and everything that you're giving to that. And thank you. This is a big input that y'all have a chance to make. And I know that all three of y'all are going to make sure that that's very loud and clear to the mayor for this, and Chairman Massengale of that particular committee. So thank you. I want to close this particular effort out with seniors with a basic group of questions about how you're handling the seniors. How are they going to get their official transcripts? Are the diplomas going to be mailed? What is the plan for AP exams? Does this impact dual credit classes? How do students get a verification form from driver's testing? Is there a plan for locker clean out and materials? Obviously, this helicopter mom, I'm pretty familiar with her, so I know why she's asking those type of questions. Can y'all just wrap it up? And not all three of you have to answer, but if one of y'all would like to take that on, I'd like for y'all to jump on that.
If you don't mind, I'll start. We are developing some protocols right now for our students, and this is not just seniors, it's really all of our students who may have left things in their lockers, who need to return library books, band uniforms, all of those things that we typically handle at the end of the school year. We are developing protocols so that students will be able to pick things up as well as return things. But again, we have to make sure we do that in a manner that is safe. And so we'll have to have social distancing and take all of those safety precautions.
Thank you. I'm sure Keith and Michelle.
I would say similarly, you know, we want kids to be able to, we know they need to retrieve the things that belong to them, and then we are developing a process for that, as well as we have kids who have some items that belong to the school, whether it's a library book or maybe a choir uniform or something like that. And one of the things that we'll do, we will send out information about that, but we have been trying to provide timely information, but accurate information. And that is the tight rope to walk these days, because things change every 5 minutes. But with regard to advanced placement testing, dual credit, those kinds of things, those classes have continued as usual. And I know that I can speak for Kathy and Keith when I say, if you have any questions about that, look to the website. Also, if you don't find exactly what you're looking for, I can tell you that we don't always see eye to eye, but the Texas Education Agency, in my opinion, and the Texas Commissioner of Education, they have been a great resource. So if you will go to the Texas Education Agency website and it has COVID-19 guidance, there is just a ton of information about very specific questions related to advanced placement exams. Some of those are going to be offered at home, I think. You know, how you get your transcript, that would be a question that's specific to your high school. So check out your high school website, and if you don't find it, call. But there's a lot of great information that answer very granular kind of information about AP, transcripts, dual credit, all those kinds of things.
Thank you. Keith, any addition?
Just one thing I'll say, and Michelle really covered it, credit, the AP and all that continues, as well as they've, I think ACT, SAT, and the TSI are developing ways to do online testing for college admission. So those things continue, and we'll be just like we will put out protocols for how to pick up things. I mean, we need cleats and stuff picked out of the locker rooms. They're stinking up our locker rooms, you know, and at the same time, cubbies full of kindergartners work. And so all that, we're going to make sure our kids have some sort of closure. Maybe if rules are relaxed a little bit in the community and we can have gatherings of 50 or less, we could do it by classroom. But again, we could put something out like Michelle said, and tomorrow it'll be different or the rules change. And so we will do that timely. The good thing is we still have a month before really school was going to be out. So we have a little bit of time to plan accordingly.
And I'm sure continue sharing as much information through the various measures to make sure all the seniors know that they're going to be taken care of. I think all of us on this have heard that commitment that y'all have made. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for all the moderated questions so far. Let me offer some questions from the group, and I'm going to try to combine as many of them. There's been quite a few questions, so y'all bear with me. Some of the questions depend around like kids that might be having hearing or vision impaired, or the iPads they might be using, or some of the platforms. What are y'all doing specifically for that group of special needs kids, that both with their platforms as well as also any extra attention? And Kathy, I'll just start that with you.
Yes, so our special services department has deployed assistive technology to our students who need specialized equipment, so that they can still continue to have those accommodations at home. And that is really true for any student with any special need. We are continuing to provide as many of those services as we can remotely. Those that are impossible to provide remotely, we have a plan to make up those services at a later date.
And I would agree with Kathy from our perspective. The good thing about iPads is they have assistive technology built in, have the ability to read to someone, have the ability to do a lot of things with the print and different things to make accessibility not as big of a deal. But with certain services, you know, speech therapy, most of that is being done remotely, believe it or not, through Zoom meetings, through Google Meet and things of that nature. But physical therapy can't be done remotely. And so we'll have to do what Kathy's talking about, making it up. I'll speak for all three of us. I know there's a concern about that, but the three of us are committed to making sure all kids have the education they need, not just kids that can do it on their own, but also the kids that have special needs. We want to make sure they're taken care of.
Thank you. Michelle, do you want to add anything?
No, not necessarily. Just that in the beginning, we did deploy a lot of assistive technology kind of devices that kids, or not even just a device, not necessarily technology related, but just something to assist in the learning. I know that we have people just, and this is happening in every district, not just Frenship, but I mean, we have students that need Braille. And so that is being provided. And in some cases, it's dropped off at the house. In some cases, the parent comes and picks it up. It just depends on the circumstance. And like we know, particularly with kids that need an accommodation, you can't just paint that with a broad brush. We're working individually with those families to try to meet as many of the needs possible.
Thank you. And one of the questions that we're beginning to address and going to have a future webinar about mental health in general, this COVID-19 and being at home, it might have caused not only stresses, but maybe impacted a little bit of that behavioral awareness, mental health issues. Or are y'all doing anything specifically? And Michelle, just ended with you. I'll let you start with that as far as the COVID-19 mental health responses to kids.
We have, you know, we are wired for connection, and all of us, and we are not getting to get that connection. And then that's despite all the other stressors. You know, we had a young lady, and I know there are lots of stories like this, but I'll just tell this story, is that we have a young lady that already didn't have parents living. They're not in the picture, so she's living with her grandparents, and they're elderly, and her grandfather passed away 2 weeks ago of COVID-19, and her grandmother has it. And so that's a very tragic story, but any kid who's even great under the best of circumstances, is we're trying to help specifically COVID related things that kids are just on edge. It was already hard to be a kid or a parent, and now it's even harder. So just kind of going back to those social emotional wraparound services that we have, counselors, as Keith mentioned, communities and schools. Another thing, and this sounds kind of crazy, but a good way for us to connect with people is we see thousands of people coming through those curbside pickup meals. People are so hungry to see other people, not just hungry for food, they're hungry to see people. And so we try to make that as much of a connection as we can. We have kids like will hand us a little gift, or they're just so happy to see us. So we're doing the best that we can to just help each other and help kids that are increasingly stressed.
Thank you. How about you, Keith?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to add than what Michelle said, but really our focus on the human factor component, making sure that we're engaging with those individuals every week on multiple occasions, checking the pulse. We've had referrals made to Star Care in a couple of situations because of just those conversations. And so really our folks look first to take care of the well-being emotionally of the kid before they look at taking care of the well-being instructionally. And that may be not something people want to hear, but it's the reality of where we are. And so those are the methods we're using.
Thank you. Kathy?
Really not much more to add. I know we've mentioned communities and schools being a huge partner, and I just want to give them a huge shout out, because they have shifted the way they operate and are now truly supporting us with some of our most at-risk students. And we really appreciate that partnership with the communities and schools. Our counselors are reaching out. Again, I love what Michelle said about the lunch pickups, because we have 16 curbside sites and 24 bus routes going into the neighborhood Monday through Friday. And so it is a great way for us to put our eyes on kids. And then just having those Google Meets, classroom meets with the teachers, having our students actually get on there so that we can see their faces, I think has been a huge component. But again, layers, I know all three of us have layers of protection to make sure that kids aren't falling through the cracks during this time.
Thank you. There's several questions about, one big question would be, what are y'all's plans for the fall? And then before you answer that question, any idea from TEA or anybody talking about, Kathy, I'll let you start with this answer, ending class early this year and to allow bridging the gap, and when do you plan on starting in classroom education this fall?
Well, I know I probably speak for all three of us when I say I wish we could answer the question about the fall, but the plan that we have right now is to, all three of us have already adopted our calendar for next year, and so we plan on starting when we said we would. As far as ending this school year early, we also have an adopted calendar this year, and so I know Lubbock ISD and I believe the other two districts, we plan on providing remote instruction until our very last day of school, and for Lubbock ISD, that's May 22nd. So that is our plan right now, and that's also important because the state funding is tied to our calendars, and so we need to make sure that we are continuing to do that. That being said, we know that there are huge academic gaps that are being created right now, so our summer learning plan will look different than it has in previous years. It's going to be robust, and hopefully we can do some of that face-to-face if some of the restrictions are lifted later in the summer. And we know when we start back, we'll have to have some intensive plans to make sure that we're filling gaps for our kids.
Thank you. Michelle, you're not going to prognosticate any differently, I bet.
No, same for us. We're going to start on the day we planned, and we're going to end on the day we planned because of the issues that Kathy already discussed. One of the things I did want to say is that just another thing teachers are doing is that our teachers we do this every year, but it's going to look a little bit different this year, is we do what we call a curriculum audit. And so we have teachers kind of help say, here's how the pacing and sequencing went well this year, and we're going to have to add to that this year. They are going to meet, but it's going to be virtually, and they're going to work on where did we leave off on the curriculum. And so we're going to have to start next year with kind of maybe spiraling in things that we didn't get to do this past year. I also think it's important next fall, instead of getting so quickly hitting the ground running and going, oh, we got to catch up to what we missed last year, we need some wins. Kids need to come back to school in the fall, and yes, learning is important, but also confidence is important and wellness is important. So we're going to have some big wins, and in the fall, I'm going to be so glad to see some kids and some humans. So it's going to be awesome.
Thank you, Michelle. Keith.
Yeah, nothing additional from us. We are going to abide by our calendars, as was said, and we'll refocus this summer. We hope to have some in-person, face-to-face instruction this summer with our kids that need it the most. But we want to return to normalcy as much as possible for kids in the fall. And so having the structure, we're going to have some celebration at the beginning of the year just to welcome them back into the learning environment. Whether they like it or not, they've learned new habits. They're not probably getting up at the same time they've been used to getting up during the school year. All that's going to change. We've got to renormalize, but also try to give them that sense of encouragement and direction that, hey, things are going to be okay. We're going to have school in the fall just like we always do.
Keith, thank you. And I think I can say this on behalf of all the folks who had a chance to participate and have a chance to see y'all and hear y'all today. We want to thank y'all very much for both your leadership, the support that you've given to both your administrators, your staffs, your teachers, and especially the kids. So thank you very much. And there's a lot of kudos on here for y'all. And on behalf of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, our board, our members, and we want to say thank y'all very much for your dedication to the most important workforce training effort that we have in our community, and that's your schools. So thank you very much for joining us. I want to remind everybody that this has been recorded and we'll be posting up on our LubbockChamber.com website as quickly as possible. And if we could give everybody just a round of applause, let's just say thank you very much to 3 superheroes. Thank y'all very much. Y'all get back to work.